So, well, I'm Michael, founder of Worldwide Studios. I work with Dylan. Dylan's full stack AI engineer, and I come from the accelerator background. And we've been running programs this last year, 2 week sprints, helping investors, founders, and builders learn these tools. And we thought an introduction to no-code tools was like a favor for people who aren't technical. But what ended up happening is these tools are so good. They're actually really nice to integrate into all different parts of a team stack, an operations, or a product stack. So I'm just showing you right now what gumloop looks like. You can think of gumloop like a virtual Lego block builder. So previously you would have had to had an automation engineer and an integrations engineer to say, hey, like take this file and this PDF from Google Drive. Let's make sure we can read it, actually grab the file. Let's connect it to an API like Claude Sonnet to be able to get feedback from it. And so it take a bit of time and it's a little bit finicky to connect these things. And in gumloop, it's as easy as just a drag and drop. Where as this is a visual canvas with each node, the zoom controls are in the way of the gumloop controls. Cool. You can just add different nodes like asking AI or extracting data. And so each node is kind of a plug and play. So there's an input and there's an output. And that output is some kind of transformation you can use. You can scrape information on the web, you can read files, you can send it to an AI, and with different models like image gen from ChatGPT or thought models, you can actually end up doing a lot with these Ask AI models. And how gumloop works is just connect one node to the next. So I'm just connecting an interface node right now. And as we can see here, there's 2 different variables that are connected here. Who is this for, and the link to the PDF, which we can then pull into this node. And so actually I'll do a demo to get a better understanding of like what this workflow is and how it works, but just wanted to show the fundamentals where gumloop is it's a virtual Lego block. And so one of the things I've been really interested in the last couple of months in terms of the updates with these platforms, so this is just the update from gumloop this last week. We don't work for gumloop, we're just a fan of gumloop. We've tried over a dozen different no-code platforms and we're just a fan of it. And so in terms of some of the updates, we've got image generator. We'll show what that looks like later. You've got the ability to read and write slides on Google Slides. And then we also have the latest thinking model. So that's what we were talking about before is like the pros and cons to OpenAI's latest releases to O3. Really good for tool use and analysis. A little bit too helpful as an assistant that it's like your yes person, just saying yes to everything. So with every new model comes kind of a period of trying to figure out what that model is good and not good for. So this main workflow that I'll demo today has an interface that looks like this. And so gumloop has the ability to make no-code front-end interfaces. Think of it like a smart Google form pretty much. And so the gumloop that I designed was a pitch feedback design form. And so on our side, we've actually been applying to a couple different venture grants because we're in the education space. You could do this for customer sales decks. You could do this for VC pitches. You could also do this for team hiring decks, just in terms of getting feedback from any person you want for a visual presentation that you have. And so in terms of what this looks like, 2-step form, very simple on the front end. Who is this for? And then what's the link to the PDF? And so the example I'll show here, we applied in June to a 100K education grant. Most of these grants are black boxes. Every investor has their own criteria, just like every customer ends up having their own criteria. So our goal is to figure out, based off the opportunity we're applying to, can we actually get feedback that's specific to that context? And then this is an example. This is the PDF I'll give it. This was a deck that we made in like probably less than 2 hours. This was a first draft. It's very, very rough. There's way too many slides. The data doesn't make sense. So this was a work in progress deck just to see what can this gumloop feedback give us, knowing that there's 2 things here. We're applying to the OSV grant for 100K. And then in terms of link of PDF, I have it stored just in Google Drive right now. So I'm just copying that link here. Anywhere you could store the PDF, you could have it. So in terms of gumloop, we've got this no-code front end. I'm just gonna hit run. You've got this progress bar. It takes about a minute to run through this workflow. And so as this workflow is running through, I'll explain how it works, and then we'll come back to see this happening in live time. So it also might fail. Live demos, we're here for it. And so in terms of the workflow itself, there's 2 main parts to this workflow. Once that information is submitted, we have a part of the workflow that actually reads the PDF. So this read PDF node is taking the link to the PDF. So we have the use link function. It's being able to read the content in a structured way. So we're actually being able to pull it from an LLM. It's not just screenshots. It's actually taking the text and information. And one of the main things I added in here was splitting up the PDF by page. So for some documents, let's say you're writing an academic research paper or a memo, maybe you don't need page numbers, but for slides, every page matters. So I just have it separating it by page so that it has slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, so it'll give better feedback. And so as it's reading the PDF, it creates a list of every single slide. We don't need to run this thing 20 times for 20 slides. So it just combines it into a text-based list here, and then it feeds it into the feedback prompt here. So on one side, we're reading the PDF, and then on the other side, we're actually doing web research right now saying, hey, based off of the organization or the person who's the audience for this pitch deck, let's do research. And so because this I've set up as like an investor deck or a grant deck, I just have the prompt here that's try to figure out the criteria if you can online and find 3 to 5 past winners. So if you were doing a sales deck, for example, you could just say, hey, I'm gonna give you either a company name or a specific person at that company. Please research all the information you can on their social media or any content they have to best understand this person. So we have a live web search node that's using Perplexity's API. And then the text ends up being like this whole 2-page thing. We don't need that, so we just have a summarizer. Give us the top response to summarize it, which then all comes into this Ask AI node. So the real magic of gumloop as a no-code automation tool is it's built from the ground up with AI as the baseline. And so this Ask AI node is using OpenAI's new O3 model. I like it as a thinking model, so you can switch these out just as quickly as just a drop-down menu here if you have other models you like. For different reasons. And then because all of those workflows can connect to this, we're actually pulling different information. So this is a pitch deck 4, and we're pulling in that first form data. So as I typed in OSV grant, it's pulling in that. To be successful, please consider this criteria. So it's pulling in the summary from the web research. Think through all the ways it can be improved. Here's the information slide by slide, so it's getting the readout. And then with prompt engineering, it's really nice to have whatever format you want as an output. And this is the way I like to do feedback, like complement it honestly, score it against the criteria, top feedback, and feedback per slide. But you could also change this up if there was other ways you wanted to do feedback, and the output is here. So that's a run through of under the engine. And let's actually see, so it took about just over a minute to run. So output, we can say, hey, what you did really well. You've got a really inspiring vision, Olympic level training for next generation innovators. It's urgent and exciting. Nice. I would say that was one of the good parts of the draft. Credible personal track record. Cool. So it's a strong team. And also early traction. Like we've done some things before that has early traction. So those are the things that we did well. This is probably one of my favorite parts of this workflow is it's able to take the criteria. So problem clarity, solution, traction, team, good public alignment. It decided that this was the best criteria based off of its research, and it's now scoring based off of that. And the scoring is 1 to 5. 1 being this is horrible, 5 being this is world class. And we can see here that it's not being a helpful assistant saying you're 4s across the board. It's like, hey, I'm actually going to be honest here. Strong problem, and let's see why. You show that education hasn't kept pace with technology, and you've got some contrasts. Solution could be clearer, right? So we have a 3. AI agents plus community plus coaching is intriguing, but it's still abstract. How to get to a 5. Show the diagram, the user journey, figure out benchmarks, and then competition. Yeah, that's actually pretty good feedback. It being a draft, that was definitely something we could tighten up. In terms of traction and evidence. So it's funny, it says that was one of the things you did well, but also low score. So let's see why. Pilots and testimonials are a start. But this is interesting, right? If we're applying to grants and public funding, make sure you have retention percentages, make sure you have impact scores, learning data outcome, revenue, cost to acquire customers. So that's also good feedback that's saying, hey, because this is a venture philanthropy opportunity, don't just have hand-wavy high-level results, actually quantify it. And let's just look at one more. Clarity, narrative, and flow, 2 out of 5. Missing logical bridge, long sentences. Cut duplicates, give each slide 1 header, 3 bullet point max. And that was actually, when we were finalizing this, that was actually Dylan's feedback too. He's like, hey, too many slides, let's make it shorter. So cool to see that this caught that in that flow. And then it also is a telling assumption, hey, we assume that they care about public benefit, and if it doesn't, you can actually adjust from there. So it's nice to have that. And then we've got even more feedback, right, too. Here's how you actually can tighten up the narrative. So just reduce this down to 1 slide, which this was the #1 piece of feedback based off of this draft. So it's cool to see that it caught that here in the #1 feedback. Tangible mock-up, I would agree with that. And then measurable buy-ins from the grants, could spend more time there. And then the last thing you're just doing with this workflow is because we separate it slide by slide, like just like you would like with your team, you can actually go slide by slide to say, hey, here's what's actually missing. And it's cool to say, so just let's check out this one in terms of slide number 3, tech progress. So if we go over here, let's see which tech progress. So this might be something I have to check out because it looks like it's mixing up the slides from the charts, but I think it's reading through this one. But let's see what it says. One chart is enough, cut out extra copy, end with thesis. Okay, cool. So I might have to check the slide alignment here because this is a prototype gum loop, but we've got all the feedback here. Cool. So that's how this works. And then in terms of being able to see that actually in gum loop, so we've explained how the gum loop works step by step, but we also want to say, hey, how did this gum loop actually give feedback for the slide? For gum loop itself, there's a really nice workflow editor where just like in code, you can see every single step. For gum loop, we can see the inputs and outputs at every single step too to get an understanding of like, well, why did the gum loop give this feedback? So one thing I'm always curious about is for web research here, we can see the input was what we typed into the form, OSV grants, citations, it's reading different links, and then here's the response. And so because we're using a thinking model, it'll actually have the chain of thought. So let's tackle this query about grants. We want to understand details for latest funding, and then it's reading. Selection criteria here, visionary scope, proof of work, global accessibility. It has some past winners, and then it has some ideas for feedback too. So we can see that this was what was pulled out. This is the raw text that was pulled out from Perplexity's node. And so I just added the summarizer node. So let's actually see based off of the input from that Perplexity node. So everything we just saw is the input for the summarizer, and then the output is this. And this is interesting. So one place that this gum loop is actually broken is it didn't actually get the content right. So I might update this. So let's actually just do that now in live time. So the other thing about gum loop, because it's visual, we can update this. So I'm just deleting that summarizer node. It didn't read it properly. And I'm just going to put that directly here to the Ask AI node. So instead of having a summarization, we're actually just going to put the whole Perplexity response here. We're going to save this, and we're going to run it again. So the other benefit about something like gum loop is you can iterate in just like in minutes. If something's not behaving the way that you want to, if the output isn't the thing that you want, we just updated that in live time. We saved it. And I'm just going to run it again here in the background just to see if we can get some more specific feedback from the Perplexity, because that was lost in that last workflow. So that's an example of gum loop. We covered the interface. We covered the visual nodes, how that node works. I'll pause there because that was a lot of information, and I've got a few other examples can show you, but just curious as this one is running. Yeah, do you have any questions? You want to hear anything? Double click on anything again because I know went through a lot.
Yeah, it was a great demo. Thank you for doing that. It looks like a multi-agent workflow. Um, so uh, yeah, it was a really great demo. I don't have too much feedback except for that, really.
Yeah, that's okay. And I think the interesting thing about tools like Gumloop, like you mentioned, we're bringing in multiple tools, and each one of those tools can have a layer of tool use, like reading PDF, or you can even scrape web pages if for sales data, if you want to scrape product information from a company or traction information or their blog. And then you also have the ability to do multiple AI calls back to back to back, which ends up saving a lot of time. As an automation tool, it's really nice to see just certain workflows be fully automated versus having to be the copy paste person where you're like copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, or having to hard code it too.
Cool. And I like that it's in the ed tech space as well.
Yeah, that's our background. So I always, whenever I build out a gum loop, unless someone has a specific example, I always just like, oh, how could we use gum loop moving forward? And this saves us both at least an hour each because it's able, we both can use it asynchronously. It's targeted towards just what the best outcome is. And even if we don't agree with the feedback, we now have a scoring criteria we can use over and over again. So there's multiple parts of this gum loop that we can pull out.
I think it was better than the WhatsApp um,
Hmm.
article writer because I was trying to email the responses to myself,
Yeah.
build off the tables, data.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits of using tools like Gumloop. I like to think of it as like DIY AI, where like you have full control over the system level prompts, you have full control over the models that you use, you have full control over your workflows. And so I think right now we're in a really funny time where every single large company like the Perplexities of the world, the Anthropics, the OpenAIs, and the Googles of the world, they're trying to make a product that works for everybody. And because they're trying to make a product that works for everybody, it's an amazing foundation. These foundation models are actually amazing. It's not always helpful right now immediately for personal workflows. So when you think of like, why would I spend the time to learn gumloop, or why would I spend the time, just even right there, why would I spend the time debugging one node in another node? Is once it works for you, everyone on your team can use it. Once it works for you, it's now specific to that workflow. And I think that's really the power of these kinds of platforms, is you can have non-technical people build out specific workflows that you know will actually be helpful. So this is just an example. We swapped out the summarizer node because it didn't work. And we can even see already this looks more like an OSV level criteria, where it's like, how bold is this? And it's like, hey, we really like the self-driving schools. Double click on that. And it's just like, hey, just so you know, be even more ambitious with the outcome. It's like, hey, that's helpful. We could increase that. And then this is also always interesting, for OSV, they actually have a really large community. They have a free Discord. So it's really cool to hear, hey, I would never have guessed this. This is not something I would have thought of as a human feedback loop. Hey, because there's a large network, make sure you actually explain how their larger funding arm, their larger community can actually help you, and like add introductions and resources you can tap, which is such a great use case. That's something that, again, might be more obvious when you're not like in it, but this is definitely a non-obvious piece of feedback that it's actually super nice to see. So this is just the output, just with that feedback.
That's awesome. So you charge for using the app, and it's like focused on grant material?
This app itself, so Gumloop, I can show you the pricing. There's a free tier for Gumloop. So if you just want to get started and you just want to try it out, there's a free 1,000 credits. Each credit is about, I think it's 3 credits per cent. Yeah, it's like 1/3 of a cent per credit. And every AI node is about 20 credits. So you could run 50 different workflows on the free tier just to try it out. Just for context, this one used 2 AI nodes and a file reader node, so it cost about 50 credits. So on the free tier, we could actually run this workflow for 20 different slides, 20 different people, 20 different proposals, and it's free. And the main mental model, the one thing that makes Gumloop a little bit different than some other tools, a lot of people are like, why would I pay $100 a month or even $300 a month for this particular platform? And for Gumloop, it's set up more as a premium automation assistant. So one of the, I can just show you.
Where does it like, do you have a front end where you can look at all different types of AI assistants? Because like,
Yeah, good question. So Gumloop. So for all platforms like this, because it's DIY AI, people are making their own. And so they've aggregated the top 50 templates. So if you're like, hey, I don't want to start from scratch, they actually, this is new. They have a pitch deck analysis one, which is interesting. They have a sales forecasting. They have a lead outreach. So if you're like, hey, I just want to use kind of Gumloop as it is, and I don't need to make my own to start. I just want to start from something that exists. You can check out their templates. And as you hit view template, now, so this one uses an interface node, which we have here. And just as I showed you one that we built from scratch, this will have everything on the canvas for you and with notes. So saying, hey, this one's a subflow. You can see how that actually works. This is a join path node. And so for the templates, you can actually just run them right out of the box. Everyone should work. And then it's a way to shop around to, again, LinkedIn message generator, emerging founders scout. This one's also new, so it's cool to see them updating these templates too. So this is a way to try out different Gumloops without having to build them.
nice. That's really cool. And demo. I can't purchase today, but this is a great demo.
Yeah, and I would say in terms of Gumloop, you can also just try it for free. Don't need to purchase anything. That's why we also we picked a couple different platforms, and we made sure there was a free tier. Because I think for a lot of people, it's still about, you've got to build trust with these platforms. Like, how do they work and do they work? And you've also got to evaluate the output. Like, is this actually worth me putting the time into building and testing these things out? And for Gumloop, the main mental model is this isn't quite like a virtual assistant that you might pay like tens of dollars in an hour or a week or whatever it may be. This is really set up as like an associate, like on your team, where you would hire for like $1,000 to $2,000 a month. So the reason that their pricing is set up this way is it can really handle complex workflows or a lot of different tasks. So this ends up being almost like an extra team member or an augmentation to the team. Just even when you think about personal pricing, I find that that mental model is helpful. So one other example I can show you is this week, one of the latest additions was ChatGPT 4.0 image generation. The image gen is really good at taking different information and generating different outputs. So this is an example of someone from the community who showed this week. You input a product idea, it'll do research on the product idea, and then based off of that research, it'll actually generate an ad. So this is for athletic greens, and this is an image that was just made with Image Gen, where there's a tagline and then there's a product feature there. And so it's also really interesting when you start thinking about image generation too. It feels like we're starting to get like Canva level or Photoshop level ability. And the one thing that definitely looks interesting is Athletic Greens doesn't quite pour out of the bag. So there's a little bit of that's better. That one looks more like powder. A little bit of like also fine tuning on the image side too. Yeah, like that too. So it's kind of funny per product, but just the fact that you could have a person, a model, and then give it specs of like, hey, I want to run this on Facebook ads, I want to run this on X, or I just need a social media post. I think there's a lot of opportunity to actually mix up image generation, and these are brand new. The API was just released last week from OpenAI, so there's definitely an ability to iterate based off of different ideas that you might have. So if you're doing sales examples, sale outreach, for example, you could create customer renders. So show specific examples of your product helping out their team or different things. You could do slide generation. So if you don't want to use stock image generation and you also don't have a designer, you could design images for slides, which the one thing I can show, one of the things we've been using is it's very hard to imagine where and how these AI systems kind of sit. So one of the things we've been using image generation for is to show people like different platforms, and we're almost treating it like this like glowing orb on top of the platform. So you've got like different logos, different platforms kind of in context. And these are just images that were like, hey, we've got an image that we like. Let's add in just like a glowing shield to show that these are projects that are made with AI. So it's cool to see with image generation, you can do light Photoshop level work, which previously would have been out of reach for most people, either with budget or skill set or time.
It's awesome. It's like with Etsy, those people that designed digital wallpaper.
Yep. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
they have,
You could even productize that. Yeah, stickers, wallpaper.
yeah. This would have been a good workflow to have.
Yeah. Awesome. I know we're coming up at time. Any other questions that we can be helpful with? Can be anything in the world of Gumloop or in the world of general AI. We've run coding sprints, non-coding sprints, voice agents. We're now looking at different things. So yeah, any other questions we can help with?
Um, no, I do actually have another meeting to go to.
Totally okay. Enjoy the next meeting. This is recorded, so we'll send you the recording so you have it. I know how much we went through. But we just think about, is it worth recording and send the recording afterwards? Hence the density. We'll send that afterwards. And if you have any questions, just email us. Happy to help get you started.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much for the demo. I'll remember.
You're welcome. Take care. Enjoy.